Some of you here this afternoon will know of the Roll of Honour for the 356th Fighter Group, the 72 names. But we have always wondered how many names there were, or how many people were killed, that should be on this memorial on your right hand side. Christy Drake, as I said earlier, and her husband Rob have worked tirelessly for several years now to collect all of the names. We say all of the names. We can only hope that we have collected every name, but there may be a name that we've missed. So I'd like to introduce this afternoon Christy Drake, who's going to tell you a little bit about the memorial, about the Roll of Honour. And as she comes up, could those who are going to read the Rolls of Honour, could they please follow her up? Thank you.
For the majority of the 46 years between 1917 and 1963, RAF Martlesham Heath was arguably the most significant British military airfield. It was at the forefront of hazardous aviation research and development and active during both World Wars, playing host to airmen of many nations. During this time, 119 courageous airmen and civilians served in or with the Royal Flying Corps, the Royal Air Force, and the air forces of Commonwealth, Dominions and exiled nations lost their lives at or from this airfield. They did this in the defence of freedom, democracy and for our future. These included 87 British airmen, 18 Canadians, 4 New Zealanders, 3 Australians and 1 Pole. 6 American nationals also gave their lives defending the United Kingdom during its darkest hours while serving with 71 Eagle Squadron Royal Air Force. For the first time in history, the names of these courageous young men have been recorded together so that the generations to follow may hear their names and remember those before them who paid the ultimate price for the freedom we enjoy today while serving at or from this very place.
Flying Officer James Henry Leslie Allen, aged 25. Lieutenant Melville Richard Howard Agnew Allen. Flying Officer John James Allen, aged 22. Mr. Robert P. Alston. Flying Officer Roland Raymond Amy, aged 20. Sergeant John Albert Anderson, 21. Flight Sergeant Sidney Ashby, Military Medal, aged 22. Flying Officer John Butler Eyre. Sergeant David Hart Ayres, aged 26. Lieutenant C.W. Bain. Corporal George Roger Ball, 26. Captain Leonard Monteagle Barlow, Distinguished Flying Cross with 2 bars, aged 19. Pilot Officer John Sanders Barnwell, aged 20. Flight Lieutenant Hugh Allen Beresford, aged 25. Pilot Officer John Lawrence Bickerdike, 21. Flight Lieutenant Ernest Bird, 26. Mr. Joseph Burkle. Sergeant John Blackie, aged 20. Sergeant William Henry Blades, 21. Pilot Officer Camille Robespierre Bonsignor, 22. Flight Sergeant John William Boyce, 25. Sergeant Richard Whittington Bruin, 20. Flying Officer Marvin Kitchener Brown, 25. Corporal George Roger Budd, aged 26. Pilot Officer Raymond Gilbert Burridge, 20. Flight Lieutenant Campbell. Flight Sergeant Neville Southwell Cardell. Sergeant Raymond Arthur Carr, aged 20. Squadron Leader R. Cazalet. Pilot Officer Arthur Dickens Chittenden, aged 20. Flying Officer Gordon Sampson Clear, Distinguished Flying Cross, aged 31.
Flight Lieutenant Leslie Arthur Coe, aged 34. Flying Officer J. R. Cork. Sergeant Wilfred John Cowell, aged 27. Flying Officer Lawrence Elwood Priderman, aged 26. Flying Officer Frank Kyoto, aged 27. Lieutenant Jeffrey Edgar Cushing, aged 19. Lieutenant S.H.A. Darcy, Distinguished Service Order. Flying Officer James Lloyd Darby, aged 24. Flying Officer Harold Camper Dauncey, aged 21. Flight Sergeant Charles Ernest DeVale. Pilot Officer S. Elmrich. Pilot Officer Henry Coxon Ferguson Fenton. Pilot Officer John F. Flynn, aged 29. Flight Sergeant Albert Force, aged 28. Flying Officer Harold William Gardner. Squadron Leader Humphrey Trench Gilbert, Distinguished Flying Cross, aged 22. Mr. D. M. Gordon, Technical Assistant. Sergeant William Patrick Joseph Gregory Coleman, aged 21. Squadron Leader Rupert Hartley Watson, aged 28. Aircraftsman Class 2 E.M. Hayes, aged 32. Sergeant Alan Crookshank Hendry. Sergeant Bernard Henson. Flight Sergeant C. Higgins. Flight Sergeant Frederick Alexander Higgins, aged 23. Wing Commander Edward Goodwin Hilton, DFC, AFC, age 41. Pilot Officer Douglas William Hogg, age 23. Sergeant Robert Dudley Hogg, aged 22. Lieutenant Colonel Bertram Hopkinson, age 44. Flying Officer Alfred Charles Hawley, age 22. Leading Aircraftsman J. Hutchinson.
Pilot Officer William Burness Inabinet. Flight Lieutenant Norman Hugh Jenkins, aged 34. Aircraftsman Class 1 James O. Jessup, aged 24. Squadron Leader A. G. Jones Williams. Sergeant Leonard Jowett, aged 28. Flight Sergeant Angus Campbell Kelly, aged 27. Pilot Officer Stanley Michael Kolondorski. Pilot Officer John Lanford Latter, DFC, aged 27. Pilot Officer David Cooper Leary, DFC, age 19. Flight Lieutenant Willem Ivor Lewis, age 26. Sergeant Kenneth Lyons Long, age 21. Lieutenant L. F. D. Lutyens, age 23. Pilot Officer Gerard Hamilton Maffitt, age 24. Pilot Officer Kenneth Manger, DFC, age 23. Flying Officer George Montgomery Marshall, age 23. Flight Sergeant Ronald Frederick Martin, age 27. Pilot Officer Benjamin Freeman Mays, age 29. Sergeant Edward McCluggage, age 23. Sergeant Francis James McGaw, age 19. Pilot Officer James Leland McGuinness. Flying Officer William Lidston McKnight, DFC, age 22. Flying Officer Mervyn Jack Mills, age 19. Aircraftsman Minns. Pilot Officer Lancelot Robert Mitchell, age 24. Sergeant John Kemp Murdoch, age 20. Captain Keith Knox Musprat, MC, age 20. Sergeant Richard Hines Oakley, age 20. Pilot Officer His Highness Prince Alexander Obolensky, age 24. Sergeant Anthony Durrant Page, age 21. Group Captain Hubert Wilson Godfrey Jones Pendrell, MC, AFC.
Pilot Officer William Ronald Phillips, age 26. Mr. D.H. Pinsent. Warrant Officer Dennis Charles Bushman John Riddick, age 26. Flight Sergeant Ronald Frederick Reitiker, age 26. Pilot Officer Alexandra Charles Rossiter, age 25. Aircraftsman C. Sheridan. Wing Commander Percy Clark Sharon, Military Cross and Bar, aged 44. Flight Lieutenant Eric Wolfe Simmons. Aircraftsman Class 1, GP Smurthwaite. Flying Officer Arthur William Smith, age 26. Aircraftsman Class 1, R.E. Smith. Pilot Officer John Frederick Stokes. Flying Officer Leroy Means Sullivan, age 21. Captain Oliver Manners Sutton, Military Cross, age 25. Flight Lieutenant Hugh Norman Tamblin, Distinguished Flying Cross, age 23. Sergeant J.B. Thompson. Aircraftsman Class 1, Toy. Aircraftsman Class 1, Douglas Treadwell, age 21. Flying Officer Peter Charles Vickery, age 23. Sergeant James E.A. Walsh, age 24. Flight Lieutenant Michael Myers Wayman, Distinguished Flying Cross. Flying Officer G.B. Whitley. Lieutenant G.S. Wilkin. Lieutenant J.B.W. Wills, Military Cross, age 26. Pilot Officer Dennis Heathcote Whistler. Squadron Leader Charles Ainsworth Wood. Flight Sergeant Jack Cecil Woods. Flying Officer P.M. Waldridge. Flight Lieutenant Hugh Stewart Young, age 20.